ladies and gentlemen, for our next executive talk. Please welcome to moderate, and I'll allow her to introduce her very special guest. Please welcome your moderator, Sandrine Dixson-Declève. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to be here, and what a difficult task we have to follow Rory and Alistair. I want to build on a few of the key points that Rory and Alistair brought up, actually, because I think it's very important with the incredible guests that we have. We talked about European sovereignty, and we also talked about the importance of understanding how people are being brought on the journey, and we just had a little bit of that conversation. So here I have with me Sari Multala, who is really welcoming us here in your country as Minister of Climate and the Environment for the Republic of Finland. And then my dear friend, Executive Vice President of the European Commission for Clean, Just and Competitive Transition. And you, Teresa, have been working in this area for so long, both on climate and on energy, in Spain, previously in a variety of different roles. So it's such a pleasure to have you both. And maybe we can start off with some building of the reflections that we heard now just from Alistair and Rory, because we were talking a little bit about that just now, which is some of the fallacies that are not actually being dispelled. The importance of course, the market and having a fluid market, but in particular that the cost of renewables is so high and we're not allowing for people to have affordable energy. Why is that? And we just had a bit of a side conversation around the perversities of the market, the fact that we continue to subsidize fossil energy, the fact that actually renewables are tied to gas. One of the other key points that came up is the role of China and the US. And both on digital, and I know that, Teresa, yesterday, you launched the strategy on digital, and we've been talking about a twin transition, so I'd like to bring that a little bit into our conversation. Both the fact that we need digital sovereignty, and we also need energy sovereignty. And then I think there was a very important point that came in around tech-bro feudalism and how dependent we are on the technologies coming from the US, but also the questions around technologies coming from China. So maybe in opening up, we can switch a little bit to some of your perspectives, and I'm going to give a question to both of you, if I may, around. We know that energy right now, especially also with Hormuz, which is another key reminder, is one of our greatest security concerns, in addition to defense and the conflict. How can we address the competitiveness of the industry, and yet at the same time, understand that we need to really transition as fast as possible towards decarbonized energy? And that enables us to become more sovereign, less dependent on external sources. But within that is the most important point of affordability. And we had a little side conversation a little bit about that. So maybe I'll start with you first, Teresa.
So good morning. I'm very happy to be here between these very bright ladies, so committed to make our world a little bit better. And everything you have raised connects back to this idea. How we can make the world a little bit better, how we can ensure that we can create wealth to our society, to ensure a high quality of life for our citizens. And this is very connected to many of the topics that you have raised, but very much in particular when we think about energy, when we think about digital, when we think about using resources in an efficient manner, not creating harm into the future, costs that may be hidden today, and how we can do it in such a way that we prevent or avoid dependencies that can be weaponized. And unluckily, we have quite a bit of experience in the recent years on how financial critical materials, fossil fuels, may be weaponized. This is why when coming back to all the events that you have been commenting, including the closure of Hormuz, we realized that for many reasons, we started thinking about climate. We have started to think about industrial competitiveness. We have started to think about economic security. We need a fast, speedy, a fair, and effective energy transition. And the main drivers, and that doesn't mean that there are not many other things to do, but the main drivers are around how much we can electrify our energy systems, to what extent homegrown clean technologies are the main guarantee, the main de-risking policy to ensure this dependency is being gone, and to what extent this means lots of challenges for the system, the connectivity, the grids. But yes, as you said, also thinking on what are the clean tech solutions, what are the digital aspects that may require knocking on the door of someone else because we have not been developing these capacities, to what extent there may be new materials that we may be using. So, of course, we cannot think that we can be competitive if we rely on something that we do not produce. And we have discovered that fossil fuels are the most intermittent source of energy that we could figure out. We've got two deep experiences in the last 5 years.
Which is interesting, actually, because we've been talking about the intermittency of renewables, but now we can talk about the intermittency of fossil energy.
And last comment, because I'm sure that we will come back, and there are many things to comment. But the other thing is that we need to think big, and we need to count on the big business, industrials, power companies, TSOs, financial services, digital improvements, to handle the big questions. But we also need to be sure that common citizens, average citizens, households experience the benefits of this change, being perceived as a kind of social shield. If we count on reliable, affordable solutions, that lowers the energy bill, that facilitates health policies that have an impact back at home, that provides an industrial incentive to keep on manufacturing some of these goods, that creates jobs. So that has a positive impact on our society, not only at the macroeconomic level, but also at the very micro level in being measuring households. And I think that that's the big challenge, how we can facilitate this transition, so to ensure that we come across the board with all the requirements that may help into this transformation.
Thank you, and it's really interesting. You're both representing countries, actually, that have gone quite far in their investment in renewables, and especially Finland has absolutely shown the way. You're at 96%, I think, now?
In electricity production, yes.
In electricity production, exactly. So maybe same question to you, Minister, in terms of how you've also been able to make this electrification journey one which is also affordable, because most of the citizens in Finland are still enjoying quite affordable energy.
Well, first of all, welcome to Helsinki. We've ordered this beautiful weather especially for you. I think there are a few things that is the Finnish secret, so to say. One of them is that we have stamina. So first of them is that we've already decided a while ago that this is the way that we want to go. Not only because we want to be climate neutral and have clean electricity and so forth, that has maybe come later on, but also we want to be self-sufficient. And this framework that we have in the European level has been very important in guiding the investments in clean electricity and cleaner options in energy in total. So I think I couldn't emphasize more how important the EU ETS is. And therefore we have been very firm on keeping that way in the future as well. Also Prime Minister has been talking about that a lot, because we see that this stable investment environment is key to having these investments there. Otherwise they won't happen. This is obviously one thing. Then the other thing is technological neutrality. So we've had already a long time we have had nuclear energy as part of our electricity palette. And that is, at the moment, it's about 40% of the total electricity production in Finland. So this is one other, let's say, cornerstone to this possibility of this transformation. We built our nuclear electricity so far market-based, so we haven't subsidized it so far. Now that the situation has obviously changed a bit, but I won't go to that too much now. I think the other thing is the electricity market model. That is important as well. And therefore we have also been emphasizing in keeping that approximately the same, not making drastic changes. So I think the most important thing is the investment environment, and therefore the goals are also important. We have quite an ambitious climate goal. We have said that we want to be climate neutral by 2035. And if we won't get there, it's not because of our industry and energy market. It's because of the land use sector where we have a bit of challenges, so to say. But the investments are done by private sector mostly, and therefore the investment environment is the key to making this change happen. And then, of course, nowadays, maybe the biggest challenge is not anymore whether it would be that we wouldn't have clean electricity or clean energy. It's obviously one of our strengths, and why we see a lot of investments coming into Finland as well, because we do have that energy available. And the new investments in new energy production, in clean energy productions, are not to replace fossil fuels, they are to meet new demand. So I think we are in a quite unique position at this moment where we are. But of course the worry, to talk about the people, the households, I think that is very important. And now the worry is more about the fluctuation of the prices, obviously. It's hard to understand. Of course, the electricity market, how the price is formed, is quite complex. And that is something that we need to address. And of course there is now room, because of these fluctuations, there is also room for investments in consumption, also making that more, let's say, fluctuating as well, but then also all kinds of storage possibilities. And they will come. But I think in the meantime, we now are trying to, let's say, address this question that we had, for example, last winter, when we had weeks and weeks, actually months of -degrees and no wind available. And we were lucky because we didn't had any problems. We have had these hybrid attacks previous winters where we didn't have the transmitters available, all of them. But now we survived. The prices were high for a while, but I think in order to be coping also in the coming years, we have to address this problem and see that we have also this kind of energy production that can be used if there are disruptions or long periods of no wind, no sun, and still a lot of need for electricity and energy in Finland, as there is always in the winter. Yeah. So I think let's say we need now different kind of solutions, but I think we have already the puzzle pieces for making the energy production clean in Europe. Obviously, I understand that the situation is, of course, very much different in the countries that are more dependent on oil and natural gas. At the moment when prices are so high, it's obviously more difficult to make the investments because, you're short of money, so to say. Yeah. So I think it is, now we have to just find the path to all of the countries to stay put. But I maybe just add a couple of things. What happened in Finland after the terrible war against Ukraine, Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022, we still imported about 1/3 of our total energy consumption production from Russia. And now we nothing is coming anymore of the fossil energy is coming from Russia. And that shift was done very quickly. And why it was possible is obviously we had one nuclear power plant under construction and coming into use quite quickly after that. That was one part, but we had also of course, the climate law, but then we had also our own ban for coal already in place. So the investments were not going to, for example, new coal production anymore. And of course the ETS, obviously there as well, helped a lot. So I think that even accelerated the change towards renewables and clean energy production in total.
Thank you. Lots of amazing points in there. One around the market fluctuation, and I want to come a little bit to you, Teresa, as well, on the fossil fuel transition. We've just seen actually the Santa Marta process that's come out of Belém, where many countries are calling for an actual phase out. We know that the European market is very dependent price-wise on gas, so there's a need to decouple. And by the same token, we have a pretty strong framework in terms of the Green Deal and the ETS, but the ETS is up for rediscussion. So you bring in a lot of points which are very important at the European level as to how is it that we really develop the European market that we need at this time, moving towards a fossil fuel phase out, eliminating subsidies, decoupling from the price of gas while we're still strengthening the ETS. And there's a lot of pushback from some countries. So it's a lot of difficult conversations that are happening right now.
I could say it is fascinating conversations, but allow me to connect what you have said, because on one side you are reminding us of this gathering in Santa Marta that was trying to start figuring out what it means, phasing out fossil fuels. It could be much more difficult if we don't have a plan, if we don't identify how to do it in a secure manner. So it's good starting to see how it looks when we need to shift, when we need to change, because we know that we have to change. And it turns back to the very same situation that we Europeans felt in 2022, and the minister was commenting on that. In those days, I also was part of the energy community as Minister of Spain, and it was chaos, panic, how we can handle with this very high dependency from fossil fuels coming from Russia, how we are going to ensure energy for citizens, and it was February, so what it is going to mean. And the situation has not been the same now. This doesn't mean that we can relax, because we still have challenges, and we don't know how long it is going to stay, the Strait of Hormuz closed, and how it may impact. But what we know is that we were able to develop a capacity to respond as Europeans in those days, and to figure out how we can get rid of something and enter into a different phase of the deployment of a new system. And it was not connected anymore mainly on climate action, and I will come back to climate action. It was very clearly perceived as a question of economic security, not only energy security, economic security, dependencies, rebalancing how we could work on our own strengths. So we identified, yes, we have to count on a very interconnected continent so that whatever it happens, wherever it happens, we have the capacity to find other options, other solutions, so that we can build a much more consistent and intense manner to use our infrastructure so that it is more efficient, and the complementarities of each of the systems. We have been working on that since then. And yes, we adopted our grids package to the extent possible electrons, but also thinking on molecules. We have been thinking on how to transform the way we produce electricity, but now we know that we have to bet, to double down on the demand. Finland counts on a very high level of electrification compared to the rest of the European Union, around 28%. The average in Europe is 23, and our goal was 32 by 2030. That's a threshold that has been overpassed by China far ago. We are behaving as if we were oil and gas producers, exactly. And we are not.
Yes.
We need to keep on doing this. And we know, you were commenting on the ETS and climate action, we know that it has been one of the most effective drivers to transform the way we invest. We understand investments or just waste of money. And yes, we know that now we enter into a different phase, Electricity, energy sector, has broadly speaking been one of the main drivers of success of decoupling growth from emissions. Now we need to enter into the next phase. We need to facilitate to the extent possible the electrification of heat, the electrification of mobility, the electrification of industrial uses, thinking, I insist on that there is a part that could be connected to molecules. We know that the sooner we do it, the better. So we will come up with this action plan on electrification. And we are going through this review of the ETS. And very honestly, I think that the best thing Europe can do is not to lose the race on clean tech. And for that, we need to ensure that the conditions are given to keep Europe as a very appealing destination for investments, to keep on working on this transformation. And yes, there will be challenges around the basic industry. There may be challenges entering every single household, but I think that jointly we have the capacity to do so. So, yes, the ETS review is critical, is very important, and we should not miss our target. We should not think that delaying action could help into better solutions for the future to come, because we could be missing the attention to ensure that investments take place. And this is what it is about before the summer break, so the coming weeks, how we can gather all the different references, the eventual flexibilities that we may need, the looking into the future, drawing lessons from the past, the reassurance of this opportunity or this regulation as an opportunity to keep on investments on track.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to, I love the fact that you're also talking about the community, because I think there's obviously a community here. There's the community of Eurelectric who are involved in the value chain of the entire power sector. There are many experts like myself who all are really fundamentally coming back together now around electrification. That we need to electrify, we need to renewabilize, we need to digitalize, and I'm going to come to you on that point, democratize, and decentralize. And so how do we both decentralize and digitalize at a time when we know digital also has a huge demand for energy and also a huge demand for water? So that's one area. But also, how do we decentralize when we want to actually really create a market that is both centralized and decentralized at the same time? So those are some fascinating conversations, as you just said. I'd love to have your views on that, because also that links us to the Alistair Rory conversation that we had before around how do we really create a European vision? And then how do we bring customers and citizens on that vision? And my last point to both of you would be one on communication. There was also a conversation before around we're not communicating these issues of how a transition can be positive. How actually, if we tax the right things and we cost externalities, it would cost less to move towards renewables than it would actually to continue to be dependent on fossil energy. And you brought some of those points up, Teresa. I don't know if, Minister, you want to start first, and then Executive Vice President.
Yeah, of course. Well, we've made already the legislative changes in Finland that emphasizes the decentralization even more than we have. But we have quite a decentralized system already, which is, of course, playing to our benefit in terms of energy security as well, and also possibility of security of supply, obviously, as well. But of course, we have our bottlenecks as well. We are now putting a lot of investments in our transmission grid through FinGrid, also helping the company to invest even more, because we see that this electrification that you talked about has, of course, its toll on also the investments needed for transmission grid. And we don't want that to be the bottleneck in these investments that we see and we want to have in Finland. We definitely want to see the electrification go further, which means more investments in Finland. And obviously it means also later on more electricity production, because these go hand in hand. And this is maybe one thing I think as decision makers we should make it more simple when we talk about these things. It is very complex when you go to the details on how the electricity market and the price formation, all that works. But in like bigger picture, it's still a market, and it works market-based. So the investments go where it's lucrative. The ETS steers them to non-fossil options, obviously, more and more. And then the other thing is all the other legislation that we have has to be the way that it's clear the way we are going. So I think we are going to that direction, and we are paying even more attention to making it possible in the European legislation, but also at home here.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to have to quickly move now because I'm being shown that we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask, it went so fast, I could talk to you for the entire morning.
Oh, three comments. Yes, I think that it is important to enter into the further digitalization to be sure that we can handle a much more complex system with supply and demand playing the two roles from the same facility in many cases, and with many other decentralized connections in a much more efficient manner, including the grid. So I think that that's important, and that's important not to do it in such a way that we increase the dependency. So the combination of digitalization, energy, and sovereignty becomes quite important, as we did. And my final comment, because we have no more time, I think that we need to communicate in a simple manner, but overall, we need to ensure that the easy, intuitive manner to take decisions from consumers is, if we call it this way, the right one. And normally it happens connected to price. It is not that price is the only thing that counts, but price counts. So if it is more affordable, if it is more predictable, but then it is taxed much more higher, or fossil fuels are subsidized, that is not going to help. Mm-hmm. Think about the amount of money that we have spent in our trade balance just taking the fossil fuels after the Hormuz closure. So I think that there are so many reasons to be taken into consideration when we show prices and we ensure that the experience of the citizens are positive, that we should be communicating and explaining, but also showcasing that what we do is the easiest and most convincing manner, not only to contribute, but to benefit in our day-to-day life. So we'll try to do our best.
Thank you for that. And I think what we need to do is make sure that your visions, that we showcase actually the Finnish case, both remind people in Finland how lucky they are, but also showcase both Finland and actually Spain and other countries that are really moving forward quite fast. I'm going to conclude with another point that you made, which was so important, which is we cannot be part of this technology innovation race. And if we start backtracking because of pressure from certain governments, we need to go ahead. We know China is racing at a speed which is unbelievable. It enables us to fulfill the twin transition as well, both digitalization, optimization, and also moving forward in terms of decarbonization. So thank you both for your dedication to continuing to ensure that this transition is a reality. And I think that everyone here should give a round of applause for both of you.